As someone who's been in the fashion industry for 18 years, more than 18 years now, I have seen tons of mistakes coming from new startups and new designers who want to create their own fashion brand. And they're all avoidable mistakes. I want to give you 5 common mistakes I see happening that will actually could kill your brand. And I don't want that to happen to you. So let me help you out. Mistake number 1. Not defining your target audience. I've said this before in a previous video, but I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have a target audience. Because if you don't know who your audience is, who are you designing for? You can't design for everybody. The fashion industry is one of those things where, like, when you end up having a huge audience like a Lululemon or like a Nike or like an Adidas or like a Reformation, it happens naturally and organically. But that's not how they started out. Every brand, you gotta start small. You start small in this little box. You have your avatar of your customer and you know what she or he wants. You know what their goals are. You know with how they dress. You know how they want to feel in their clothing, and you create that for them. And then organically, as your brand grows, that target audience gets bigger and bigger and bigger because you start to speak to a wider audience. But it's so much better if you just get that target audience in the very beginning, because then you won't be wasting your time on styles and production that will never work for that audience. And also, you don't want to confuse your customer. You want people to always come to you because they're like, I need this. This is the brand I need to go to. If you start confusing your customer, they're not going to do that. They're going to look elsewhere. Take the time to really understand who your target audience is, who your target customer is, who your avatar is, and design for them. That'll also give you a much more cohesive collection and everything will make sense. Because obviously you don't want somebody to come to your website or your store and be like, oh, I like this one thing, and then that's it. Your goal is to have one person buy like everything. Basically, you want that one person to find an outfit, and then they come back and get another outfit, and then they turn into their entire wardrobe starts to be looking more like your brand. Common mistake number 2, do your competitive market research. You are not going into a market with no competitors, right? You will have competitors. Be realistic about who your competitors are. If you're in the athleisure world, your competitor is not Lululemon. If you are in the apparel, women's wear, ready-to-wear world, right off the bat, your competitor is not going to be Versace. Recognize who you're directly competing with and stalk them. Know what they're doing with their customers, what they're offering to their customers, because you want to not only learn from them, but you want to learn what they're doing so you can beat them. And you're not going to do that if you don't do the research. That means going out, seeing what they're doing, seeing the types of fabrics they're offering, seeing who their customer is, and if it aligns with who your customer is, what pricing that they offer in. It's so important for you to understand the landscape you're going to be diving yourself into, and the only way you're going to be able to do that is with market research. So make sure that you know who your competitors are, because there's only a finite amount of customers. If your competitor is already in the market and they've already got your customers, you need to know what they're doing in order to yank those customers to you. So make sure you do your competitive market research. Don't skimp on this because it's so important. Common mistake number 3, failing to create a brand aesthetic. This is going to cost you in the beginning and in the end if you don't do this. If you're going out and you're going to find a designer, someone like me, to help you design your collection, and you have not done the pre-work to at least tell me what your brand aesthetic is, I need to know the vibe of your brand. Are you a minimalist brand? What styles you want to do? Who is your style icons that you want to pull from that for inspiration? What uniqueness do you want to bring to your brand? There needs to be consistency across the board when it comes to your brand. The goal is that when somebody looks at some garment, they can recognize it's your brand. And the only way you do that is to create a brand aesthetic that people recognize. And the only way you create a brand aesthetic people recognize is through repetition. You need to be consistent. It doesn't mean do the same thing every single time, but the overall aesthetic and look is very cohesive, meaning that one flows into the other. One top can go with multiple bottoms because it is obviously created by the same designer. I will tell you that even designers have an issue with this. It honestly is one of the hardest things to learn when you're becoming a designer. It comes with practice to be able to create a cohesive collection. When I was in design school, I was all over the map because you're just kind of wanting to do everything. And it's one of the hardest things, I think, when it comes to design, any design, graphic design, apparel design, picking colors even, is editing. But editing is the thing that is so important because that really disseminates everything from this huge starting point of all the designs you could do, and your editing just funnels it down to get it to that one spot where you're like, this is what I am. And then from there, once you really figure out and hone and know this design aesthetic, then you can expand it out because you'll know what it's meant to look like. You can see and visualize how you can take that design aesthetic and consistently bring it out to more styles and more styles over the months and over the years. Have a design aesthetic, and this is something that's going to be progressive. It doesn't mean you have to do, it's going to be the exact same from the very beginning to the 5 years from now. You're always going to be progressing, but have that first solidified core design aesthetic so you can either give to a designer so they can help you design your collection, so that when it gets to your customers, you're also not going to be confusing your customers about what type of aesthetic they're going to be expecting from you. Is it going to be vintage? Is it going to be modern? Is it going to be super feminine? Is it going to be super masculine? And what are the colors and what are the lines you're going to be using? These are the things you need to think about. And just as an example, your design aesthetic does not have to be, oh, every time we have this button, it's got to be this. Every time we're only using these colors. It can be just an inspiration that you're going to be pulling everything from. For example, did you know that Ralph Lauren, his entire brand and style and collection and aesthetic is inspired by the American classic cars? That's where he pulls all of his inspiration from. And that's why everything looks very cohesive in the collection. You can tell a Ralph Lauren's garment from another because they come from that one very focused inspiration. Find that inspiration that you want to pull from that's going to carry your brand throughout the years and you build off of. And common mistake number 4 is not having realistic timelines for your development and production, even the design work. I know a lot of people that just want to start clothing brands get very excited and they're just like, I want to get this out as soon as possible. I have this arbitrary date, or a client will have a friend or knows somebody that is having a photo shoot and they say, I can squeeze you in to this photo shoot so you don't have to pay as much if you can get your samples in time, and it's a completely unreasonable time. Not understanding the proper timeline for you to make a clothing brand is going to cause a lot of stress because the actual real timelines for apparel are a lot longer than you think they're going to be. So don't rush through your development. Your development is how you're going to build your styles and create your brand and create your aesthetic and create your fit. So rushing through any of those things is really going to kill your brand, to be honest. Rushing through that is going to be the way for you to just miss mistakes, and therefore those mistakes in development that are missed get exponentially bigger in production because now you've got thousands, maybe tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars locked up in your production. And if you were rushing through your development and you didn't catch those mistakes are going to follow you into production. You're setting yourself up for a lot of money wasted, time wasted between you and the factory, and it'll almost always ends up taking actually longer when you're trying to rush things through. If you really want to have a very fast timeline and get your brand, your collections out as soon as possible, then print on demand is just going to be the easiest way for you. You pick out the styles, you create your graphics, whether it be with a designer or yourself, you find your supplier, upload your artwork, and then you launch. Like literally, you could do that in a week. If you have the artwork, you can do that in 24 hours if you wanted to. Private label, it's gonna take you about 2 to 4 months because now you need to source the actual styles that you want, double check that they're what you want, the fabric and the colors that they offer. You need to find yourself an embellisher, screen printer, embroiderer, whatever, and then, obviously do the photo shoot for it and then put it up on your website. So it's a lot more work on your end doing the same thing as print on demand. OEM, you're looking at least 4 to 6 months. Even though you are not doing the whole finding the embellisher, the screen printer, the embroiderer yourself, you're finding a factory that has ready-made garments for you to order. And if you're having them make any changes to it, your lead time for production only is going to be 30 days. Now you got to go back and forth to get those samples, and you're sampling overseas. The transit times can be longer. You have to allot for those kind of things. And then if you're doing contract manufacturing, minimum 6 to 9 months. We just discussed why that is, because it's the longest process to go when you're going through all the development and sampling and pre-production process, but that's also the way you're going to get a clothing line that's really specific to your brand. So be very, very aware of appropriate timelines, because if you are not, then you're just setting yourself for failure. And we don't want that to happen to you. Common mistake number 5. You really need to understand how much it's going to cost you to create a clothing brand. I find that most startups and entrepreneurs have no idea what this is going to be. It's mostly a sticker shock. And then I feel bad because it's like I try to be very transparent with my clients upfront about how much things could potentially cost, and generally it's a lot more than they think. The reason is because you need to understand all the underlining costs that need to be paid in order for you to do production and get it to you, especially if you're doing contract manufacturing. Because I think a lot of people just only think that it's just going to cost me in production like $6 for a t-shirt, and then you don't think about how much it costs if you need to hire a designer. That designer's hourly rate times however long it takes for them to make the initial design, the tech pack, the specs, the time for it to go back and forth, a sample, because a factory is going to charge you for sampling, and they will charge you for shipping as well. And then if you're having fittings, having that fit model, doing all the revisions, it becomes a lot. And I just find that a lot of people just don't allot for that very much. So try to be really honest with yourself with your budget. If you're trying to do a completely custom brand with contract manufacturing and you want to do 10 styles and you think that you can do this with a $10,000 budget, not gonna happen. It's so not gonna happen. I'm sorry, you will not do that, because it's just, that wouldn't cover your logistics with how much MOQ that would need to be. So take the time to find a consultant that has experience in this so they can kind of walk you through what the potential budget costs are going to be. So just as a breakdown, right? In general, you have all your legal costs, obviously, and the cost for like if you have a Shopify store and things like that. That's completely separate. That's the marketing part, that's the startup part. I'm just going to talk about just the design, development, and production part. So let's say you want to hire a designer. You have 10 styles. Your designer is anywhere from $50 to $200 an hour, depending on how much experience you want your designer to have. The more styles you have for that designer to do, the more expensive that's going to be. So what is your budget going to be for that designer to create all those styles for you? Do you need all those styles? Maybe you can start your brand off with just 2. The nice thing about the industry now is that people aren't waiting for full collections anymore. So you can do drops on a more frequent basis if you want to, so you can reduce the amount of styles you're creating. After you do all that design work, if you're hiring a designer, you're going to be paying thousands and thousands of dollars to get your collections designed and properly documented with a tech pack, with specs, with references. And then you go to development. Well, development, you're going back and forth. You have to pay for samples every round, plus a shipping fee. If it's international shipping, that's going to be a minimum $200 back and forth. And then if you have a smart brand, will have a fitting. That way you can check the fit for it. Fit models cost about $150 to $200 an hour, minimum of 2 hours every fitting. Doing the revisions for that, having your designer do the revisions for that. There is a budget for your development too. And then also, if you're not the one communicating with your factory, you need to hire somebody to be able to do that. I do that for my clients, my sourcing, and that communication that I have back and forth with them and the factory, I charge for that. So be understanding about that. And then when you get to production, your production is based on your MOQ and your price per unit. So let's say if you have a 500 MOQ for a style, and that style happens to be, $6 a style, and you're just doing one color, a t-shirt, one color, 500 MOQ, $6 a unit, that's $3,000. Multiply that by how many styles and colors you want to do, and that's going to be your minimum budget for production, because that doesn't even work into what your logistics cost is going to be, which changes on almost a day-to-day basis, depending on rates. So your factory can give you a ballpark, but they're not going to be able to give you the exact number of what your shipping cost is going to be until it's ready to ship. But as a rule of thumb, I always say, kind of think about adding 30% to your production costs, and that could probably cover your duties, imports, and shipping. So It's a lot of stuff you have to think about. And people just coming in blind and I just want a clothing brand, and don't think about how much it actually costs in order for you to properly create one. There are production options for you for a lower budget, and just work within the budget you have. If you have a print-on-demand budget, but you're trying to do a contract manufacturing production, that's not gonna work. Try to take the time to really understand what the upfront costs are gonna be for you, for your ideal apparel brand, and then work backwards from that. And then just see where you can be at, whether it's reducing the amount of units you're gonna do, reducing the amount of colors you're gonna do. You're gonna try to design this on your own. You're going to design the pieces and just have a designer that just does the technical work for you, so you can reduce the costs for that. You just gotta be creative. I'm not saying that if you don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars, you shouldn't have a clothing brand. You totally can. You just gotta be realistic about what production style and how much you need to do in order to reduce the cost, and how much you're gonna pay people to do. I hope all those 5 common mistakes helped you out. There are things that I see all the time as I work with clients. I just wanna help you out and be able to get you thinking about these things so you hopefully don't fall into the same pitfalls and traps. If you like my content and you wanna see some more of it, obviously subscribe. Please comment below. I definitely want to help you out as much as I can, so I will answer the comments I see. So if you want to see my next video, it's going to be right over here, and I will see you next time. Thanks, bye.